From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Beres.
Oh, here we go.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. I'm Nick Beres here on a Monday, and we're going to talk this morning a bit about education. Actually, not just a bit, but for the full hour, and we'll invite you to join in the conversation. Education as an issue, of course. Everyone, wherever you happen to be watching us, should be concerned with it. And wherever you happen to live, there are higher performing schools, lower performing schools. Here in Nashville is what we're going to focus on, and the idea of making sure that there is a quality education for all youngsters. You hear a lot of times about the applause and the attention that the higher performing schools get. And there are some very high performing schools, and there are reasons for that. Why do some schools do better than others? All right, we're going to get into that, but we don't want to forget about those schools that aren't doing as well and where that's happening and what can be done. The focus of this is getting parents involved, because everyone wants their child to be educated, better prepared for a full life later on. And that's what we're going to talk about with Sonya Thomas, Nashville PROPEL. She's the executive director. It's good to have you on, Sonya.
It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. What you're involved with, I think, is very important. It's the education of young minds and making sure everyone has equal access to good education. First, some people are like, all right, PROPEL, PROPEL, PROPEL. If you would, before we get into some of the real issues and things that developed just within the past week here in Metro, tell us about the background PROPEL and what it's all about.
So Nashville PROPEL stands for Parents Requiring Our Public Education System to Lead. And it was founded by a group of parents, 8 of us, who actually learned about the landscape of education in July of 2018. And we realized there was a real crisis. And as I think back on the time that I met those parents, we sat in the classroom and looked at the data and how schools were performing, and realized that our kids were sitting in ground zero of the lowest performing schools in the state of Tennessee.
You have a son?
I have a son. I actually have 4 children.
Oh, you have 4 children. Well, we were just talking before the show about her son who's an accomplished baseball player, but you have 4 children.
I have 4 children.
And you realized that some of your children, okay, or all of them, would you say, when you were meeting with these parents, were in a school that you were frustrated was not one of the higher performing ones, and you're like, well, what's going on here?
You know, I realized that, and then I really wanted to know if other parents knew.
Okay.
And so we went on a journey to ask other parents, did they know what a priority school was? And they didn't.
All right.
And so for me, when I realized that my child wasn't getting the education that he needed, I quickly moved him to another school.
Now, do you determine this? I want to go point by point for parents so they really understand this. So when you realized, what was it you looked at when you met? What were the numbers? The test scores, the reading comprehension, things like that?
I looked at the data. I also looked, he was struggling.
Okay, so you could tell at home with his homework, Mom, I need help with this or whatever.
It was an aha moment because I had done everything that I knew to do, and I was doing everything that his teachers told me to do, but he was still struggling. But he was bright. He was bright, and I could not figure out. He was a good child. And it didn't have any behavior problems, so it wasn't that, right? And then I was like, does he have a learning disability? What is going on? And I moved schools. I moved him from a lower performing school to a higher performing school, and I sat in front of a teacher who told me that he was reading on a 2nd grade reading level in the 7th grade.
Okay. All right. Did it improve in the new school?
It improved.
Radically.
I mean, they literally told me right then that he could not go to the 8th grade that year.
Okay.
He was making 18s and 30s when he entered that school, but they worked with him and they did a lot of rigorous learning. They gave me some tools that I needed at home as far as supporting him emotionally. It was a whole journey.
So, all right, what is, in your mind, the difference when you moved him to the new school, okay, the school that he came from, what it was the main primary difference that allowed him to achieve there that was holding him back before? What were the issues?
High expectations.
So they had higher expectations. I'm sure there were good people at that first school. Did they not have resources? Were the quality of the teachers there on par with the other ones? I assume they're good teachers in both places. What was it?
In hindsight, a system failure.
A system failure. So did they not have resources, though? Is it that they didn't have good books, good computers? What's the difference?
That's part of it. But we have a system failure. When we look at what we're going to talk about is priority schools.
Yeah.
It's not a teacher thing. We're talking about a system of schools that are not doing well.
Okay.
And so when I sent him to another school, the system was different. The operation was different. The expectations were different. It wasn't that he was in the 7th grade and we're gonna help him to read a Bernstein Beres book. No, we're gonna put him in some college level reading, and we're going to accelerate his learning, and we're gonna work on the skills that he needs to be a better reader.
So when there's a system that you're talking about, and this is where I really want to get into the details of it as the show goes on. At the first school that he was at, is it that, again, the teachers, for whatever reason, were not asking more of the students, pushing them, maybe not working with them close enough? What's the difference there? I mean, again, these teachers should know. I mean, I would think they're good teachers. Why not push them? Why weren't they?
Because sometimes when you're in a system, it is programmed.
Okay.
There's a program, and maybe that program on the whole is not very robust for the student body, and does not have the components needed for, let's say, a neighborhood school of Black and brown children who may not have the background knowledge to read the books that they're reading.
Right off the bat.
Right. So if they're reading about Paris and nobody ever talks about Paris in their neighborhood, then you can't relate to that.
Okay. So is the solution there, and the leadership, or should the principal or the administrators not be aware and say, okay, what we're doing here, we compare our test scores to these others, it's not doing as well. They have similar type resources. I know the PTO groups may not have as much. You know, if you have a rich family group, they're going to be able to put more money personally. But in terms of what the school budget is from Metro, it's the same, isn't it?
Metro's budget is $1.3 billion.
Yeah, think about that.
And then some.
Okay, and it should be divvied up among the schools,
So
correct?
as a mother, I don't care about their money, whether it's Publix or Kroger's.
Okay.
I want my children to be fed.
Sure.
And so we have a very wealthy school system. I do think that there's some leadership things from the past and present that need to happen. Parent partnership. We don't want to be engaged. We want partnership. And I think that has to be the key component to start it off. You have parents who have left this system because they have no confidence in Metro Public Schools. And what has to happen is the partnership component has to change. As parents, we have to be listened to, and not just listened to, but taken very seriously. These babies that we birth are our very own visions, and we want to make sure that they reach their greatest potential. And if that's not being done, as we're seeing, as enrollment is dropping, parents are losing confidence in the system. So I think one of the components to turn the boat around is making sure that we have real parental partnership, not engagement. That means that you give me something and I gotta take it, even if it doesn't work.
No, right. Yeah. So in partnership, all right, so for instance, this school again that you moved your son from to another, all right, has it shown improvement since then? Has anything changed?
Yeah, I believe that it helped my son. This is what we teach parents. We want to make sure that they make informed decisions.
Well, as a parent, though, I'm trying to think. Now, my son's out of school now, but he went to school in Wilson County, and I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know that I paid all that close attention. My wife maybe did closer. I mean, he did okay with grades. He was getting by, but truth be told, sometimes I was like, gosh, I don't see him bringing home a lot of homework or whatever. I was like, what kind of education is he getting? Now, he made it through college and he's been successful, but I thought I'm a good parent, I think, but there wasn't a problem, but I let it go, and I don't know ultimately if he got a great education or not.
You know, I believe that I've never met a parent that doesn't care about their child.
I cared, I guess, but maybe I should have been more engaged. But again, my wife much more was. We thought he was. We looked at the test scores, but how does a parent know? Besides that, you said you clearly noticed some problems, but it was an eye-opener for you when they said he was reading at a 2nd grade level when he was 7th grade. You didn't know that.
He was struggling. I mean, he struggled from kindergarten all the way up to that point, and I was fighting, advocating, asking questions. Read to him for 30 minutes. Have him read to you.
So you worked with him? You read to him and everything.
I wanted to do whatever it took. I can remember nights where my teenage children would try to help him, and we'd all be crying by the end of the night. We did homework hotline. We did Khan Academy. I called for parent-teacher conferences. Everything we did. I even remember spending some of my mortgage money for a UT literacy program one summer.
So you were doing everything.
Everything that I could.
Well, and it's worked. Yeah, thank goodness for you that and he's doing well now. But I just look at you and I wonder how many parents, and you're right, all of them, if you ask them, say they care. How many are as engaged and wonderful as you are?
You know what? Many of them are fighting for their kids. And that's why it's important that we have the movement that we have to help them to effectively advocate. And so what does that mean to effectively advocate? It's question everything. It is question everybody. Then you find the truth.
Okay. Listen, we're going to go through some of the basic details here of how you exactly do that. But it was, well, we'll take a break. When we come back from this break, was it last week, right?
Yes.
Metro was celebrating the achievements of the 48 top tier schools in Metro, which is an achievement, good. But you viewed that as, all right, great. What about these other ones?
Yes.
It's like, let's celebrate, but no, it should be more important to focus on how do we get the others up here with these 48?
That's right.
Okay, we're going to talk about how to do that. We can take some phone calls. We have one coming in, 737-7587. If you'd like to sound off on this, I think it's a very important issue that affects us all. We'll talk more with our fine guest and take your calls right after this.